The hard truth about nursing homes. What I wish I knew before moving in. At 82, I've learned a lot about life. Some lessons were joyful, others painful. But if there's one decision I deeply regret, it's moving into a nursing home. At the time, it seemed like the right choice. My family encouraged it, promising I'd have care, comfort, and security. I believed them. But once I got there, I realized the reality was nothing like what I had imagined. If you're considering a nursing home, whether for yourself or a loved one, pause for a moment. Maybe it feels like the safest option. Maybe people tell you it will make life easier. But before you take that step, I want to share 6 crucial things I wish someone had told me before I moved in. Because once you go in, getting out isn't as simple as you think. Regret number 1, losing my independence. The biggest shock wasn't the small room, the fixed meal times, or the unfamiliar faces. It was the realization that I had lost control over my own life. Before, I decided when to wake up, eat, and take a walk. I could cook my own meals or simply sit in my favorite chair with a book. I could step outside whenever I pleased, feel the sun on my skin, take a deep breath of fresh air, and let the world move at my own pace. But in the nursing home, everything ran on a schedule that wasn't mine. Breakfast at a set time, even if I wasn't hungry. Lights out whether I was tired or not. Want to go outside? You might need permission and have to wait for someone to assist you. Even the most ordinary choices, what to eat, what to wear, when to rest, suddenly felt like privileges, not rights. One morning, I reached for a book I had been reading at home, only to realize that my books, my chair, my familiar comforts were all gone. The small details that made life feel like mine had vanished. The creak of my old floorboards, the scent of my favorite tea brewing in the kitchen, the soft hum of the radio playing my favorite songs, replaced by sterile walls and a routine dictated by someone else. This wasn't my home. I wasn't in charge of my life anymore. And the hardest part? Once you give up your independence, getting it back is nearly impossible. Regret number 2, feeling forgotten. When I first arrived, my family reassured me they'd visit often. And they did, at first. My daughter came by weekly, my grandchildren on weekends. For a little while, I still felt connected to my old life. We would sit and talk about familiar things, share stories, and laugh like we always had. For a time, it felt like nothing had truly changed. But then, life got busy. The calls replaced the visits. The visits became rare. First, it was a missed weekend here and there, then an entire month would pass. Holidays were the hardest. The house would fill with cheerful phone calls, but the warmth of their presence was missing. Promises to come never quite materialized, and soon I found myself watching the door, hoping today would be the day someone remembered me. I would sit by the window, straining to hear the sound of footsteps in the hallway, the familiar voices of those I loved, but more often than not, all I heard was silence. Not because they stopped loving me, but because I was no longer part of their everyday world. Life moved forward for them, but for me, time seemed to stand still. When you're out of sight, it's easier than you think to become out of mind. The world I once knew carried on without me, and that realization was the loneliest part of all. Regret number 3, losing my sense of purpose. At home, I had responsibilities, small ones, but they mattered. Watering the plants, making coffee, tidying up. Little things that gave me a reason to get up in the morning. Each day had a rhythm, a sense of purpose, even in the smallest of tasks. I took pride in keeping my home just the way I liked it, arranging my books a certain way, ensuring the plants thrived under my care. It wasn't much, but it gave me something to focus on, a sense of contribution to my own world. But in the nursing home, everything was done for me. Meals were cooked, cleaning was taken care of. My laundry appeared folded before I even thought about washing it. At first, I told myself it was nice to finally relax, to let go of these little duties. But after a few weeks, the days felt long, empty. There was nothing to look forward to, nothing to accomplish. I saw it in others too. People who once had passions and hobbies now spent their days staring, waiting for time to pass. The absence of responsibility, rather than being a relief, became a burden of its own. One man, George, had been a carpenter his whole life. At home, he was always fixing things, tightening loose screws, sanding rough edges, bringing worn-out wood back to life. But here, no tools, no projects, nothing to build. One day, he looked at me and said, "I feel useless." I knew exactly what he meant. The work that once defined him, that gave him a reason to wake up, had been stripped away, leaving him adrift in a sea of unstructured time. Without something to work toward, life starts to lose meaning. The sharp edges of ambition, the drive to create, to contribute, begin to dull. And when the mind slows down, the body follows, as if it too has forgotten what it was meant to do. Regret number 4, declining health, faster than expected. Before moving in, I was doing well for my age. I wasn't running marathons, but I could walk without much trouble, cook my own meals, and take care of myself. I had a rhythm to my days, stretching in the mornings, taking slow but steady walks in the afternoons, even handling small household chores that kept me engaged and moving. But once I moved in, everything changed. Meals were brought to me, neatly arranged on a tray, removing any reason to stand and cook. If I needed anything, I just pressed a button and someone would come to assist me. At first, it felt like a luxury, a well-earned rest after decades of independence. But soon, I noticed I was moving less. My legs began to stiffen from disuse. Getting up from a chair became a slow, deliberate effort rather than a natural motion. The walks I once enjoyed became shorter, then infrequent, then non-existent. I watched it happen to others too. People who had arrived walking on their own gradually transitioned to using canes, then walkers, and before long, some were in wheelchairs. The irony was heartbreaking. The more help we received, the more dependent we became on it. One woman, Alice, confided in me one evening, "I feel like I aged 10 years in just a few months." And she was right. When you stop using your body, you don't just slow down, you begin to lose it entirely. Muscles weaken, balance falters, and before you realize it, things you once did without thought become struggles, then impossibilities. Regret number 5, losing my privacy and dignity. At home, I had my space. I could close my door, enjoy silence, and do things on my own terms. In the nursing home, privacy became a luxury I didn't always have. Staff came in and out, scheduled room checks, shared spaces where you're rarely alone. Even getting dressed or using the bathroom often required help. It wasn't easy to accept that things I had done independently my whole life now required permission. And then there was the issue of roommates. Not everyone gets a private room. I was lucky with mine, but others weren't. I heard stories of loud, unclean, or difficult roommates that made life miserable. Losing privacy isn't just inconvenient. It changes how you see yourself. Regret number 6, realizing it's harder to leave than you think. I told myself it was temporary. If I didn't like it, I could leave. But what I didn't realize was just how hard that would be. My house sat empty, difficult to maintain from a distance. My children had started making changes, selling things, considering renting it out. When I brought up going back, they hesitated. "Are you sure you can manage? Wouldn't it be safer to stay?" And the truth? After months of relying on others, I wasn't as strong as I used to be. My confidence in living alone faded. The longer you stay, the harder it is to adjust to life outside. Some even lost the option entirely. Their home was sold, their savings drained. Leaving wasn't just difficult. For many, it became impossible. Final thoughts. Looking back, I don't regret aging, but I do regret believing a nursing home was my only choice. I walked in expecting comfort and care. What I found was a life that slowly took away my independence, privacy, purpose, and even my sense of self. Are all nursing homes bad? Some provide excellent care for those who truly need it. But before you make that decision, ask yourself, is this truly what's best for you, or just what seems easiest right now? Because once you step in, life will never be the same. If I could do it over, I would have fought harder to stay in my home, explored more ways to get help without giving up my freedom, made sure I truly needed to be there before making such a life-altering move. I would have researched alternative care options, reached out to community support groups, and found ways to modify my home to make aging in place a viable option. I would have had honest conversations with my family, expressing my fears and desires more clearly, ensuring they understood what truly mattered to me. I would have sought out professional advice, explored home care services, and done everything in my power to maintain my autonomy for as long as possible. So if you're facing this decision, take your time, consider all options, weigh the pros and cons carefully, because the life you have today, your routines, your independence, your choices, is worth holding on to for as long as you can. Once it's gone, you might find yourself longing for the very things you once took for granted.